Good evening, class. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to actually present to you over this recording. Today we will be talking about internal communications and the why and how when talking to your employees. With regards to that, there's a quote that I really remember with regards to internal communication and employee organization relationship. It's from Richard Branson from Virgin Group. He says, the way you treat your employees is the way they will treat your customers, which does remind us how important it is, when it comes to dealing with employees and how happy they are, because that would actually really reflect how much they're contributing to the organization itself. With regards to the reading material that we were supposed to read, the reading material is not a chapter in the book, therefore the way that the information is presented is not the same as the previous readings that we did. It had an intent, which is pretty much to build a link between various variables, but I managed to actually get the important part in terms of information just so I could present it to you in this presentation and on the discussion questions themselves. The reading material, of course, it's the effects of authentic leadership on strategic internal communication and employee organization relationships by Men and Stacks. And with regards to the employees, it starts out by addressing who are the employees, what are they as a public, what do we need from them. Of course, the way it's written, it's sometimes you have to look at yourself as in a form of management, looking at your team. So you would require from your team trust, commitment, job satisfaction, organization identification, as in do they identify being part of your organization and they're proud of it, and the relationship with each other and with the organization itself. Now, with regards to internal communication, why is there an emphasis? It's because organizations now need to really communicate effectively with their employees when you compare an organization to another, because number one, the technology is there. You could easily send out an email to or a circular. Now it's easy. The channels are available, and some are even use social media, which we will be talking about in our case study. And of course, public expectation. So the more transparent, the more symmetrical, the better. Now, one of the key emphasis that we will be talking about is the importance of leadership. With the leadership, why are we starting with leadership? First of all, when it comes to internal communications, if the management are not on board, it's very difficult to actually maintain or create an internal communication structure in the organization. So the reason why leadership is very important is the influences that he or she influences organizational infrastructure, and they nurture a supportive environment for communication, may it be internally amongst employees, suppliers, or externally amongst external publics and customers, whoever is involved. Now, the emphasis of the study talks about authentic leadership, which, as I mentioned, it's characterized by openness, consistency, transparency, truthfulness, and accountability, which are all have been looked at in informing what is the authentic leadership. Now, the other main variables that we talked about is we will be talking about when it comes to internal communications is the symmetrical communications, which we have already talked about it in the previous readings, and versus how it is different from asymmetrical communication, where most of the information is withheld from basically it's one side or from the organization side, and not letting other people in the know. And of course, transparency, or transparent communication. Of course, each one has their own definition. With symmetrical, it involves trust, credibility, openness, relationships, reciprocity, network symmetry, horizontal communication, feedback. And with transparent communication, you have being accurate, timely, and unequivocal information. Unequivocal means to be to not present an information where in a tone or in a way that would favor one side or the other. It's basically saying it as it is, and being offering a level of objectivity for the purpose of enhancing reasoning abilities of employees and holding organizations accountable for their actions, policies, and practices. Now, the benefits. Why are we doing this? And with internal communications, it creates a participatory, transparent communications where basically employees get to participate and they have a say in the matter, and this is quite important because number one, when they are involved, they could provide management with information that may resolve an issue before it turns into a crisis. And they escalate themselves into the decision-making process as a key source of information. And of course, what it is to the employees, I mean, they get they get the job satisfaction that they require. They feel like they're part of the team, and they have shared control. Of course, because this is not a chapter of the book and this is a study, these are pretty much my 2 cents on where did the study, where it could have been improved. Of course, this is adding to if it's up to me, I would add that to the future research and the limitation section that Men and Stacks have provided already. Of course, I found that there is a weak approach because they basically correlating a positive trait with another positive trait. Basically, it's they're positive, with the symmetrical and with transparent. So it is pretty much no-brainer. One would actually result the other, and the whole approach in providing that correlation really does not communicate to management in adopting internal communication. I think this is something that they should work on. Of course, leaders usually prefer to think themselves as authentic, and that's pretty much a blind spot that the readers may have. And not a lot of business mentality in the research. I mean, the numbers that matter are not there. Basically, what makes the management would actually consider even looking into the study, you have to include some sort of numbers because with such a problem statement, you need to get more people involved and enthusiastic enough to actually start their own internal communications program within their organization. And of course, building on that, with the study's room for improvement with regards to the previous point over here, is that if we could actually compare a post-crisis situation between, 2 or more organizations with different levels of internal communications, you see how well one has recovered versus another. But of course, we would assume that companies with a better internal communications would recover a lot faster than organizations that do not have much internal communications, because doubt would still linger after a crisis. Or they could have done a content analysis on exit interviews of organization, compare with another organization with an advanced internal communications. An exit interview means when an employee leaves an organization, they would ask them, why are you leaving? And if they would actually say that they do not feel like they're part of the team, that's kind of essential. And this is something that we could actually look at and hold management accountable for. I would even recommend a longitudinal study, roll out an internal communications program and gather survey results of time afterwards. Basically, now you've prepared an internal communications program. Let's see what people say within the organization within 6 months, and then the 6 months afterwards, and the 6 months afterwards, while the internal communications program is still rolling. I think we would have, so much results to work with, and it would actually make the study even stronger. Of course, the study's room for improvement, and pretty much my last point is that, the problem with internal communications and having people focus on it or creating a study about it is that it's an overlap between two studies that are usually unrelated to each other. Of course, in the previous class, we talked about how PR overlaps with marketing, but with internal communications, PR would actually overlap with a whole other department. They would basically overlap with human resources or human capital management studies. Maybe in future studies, they would actually look into having authors from different backgrounds and see if that would work. That is all for the overview. Thank you. I hope you enjoyed it.